to another video. So today I'm going to be discussing the disappearances of Gary McCullogh and Lena, also known as Lena Chapin, but everyone refers to her as Lena. These cases are covered on the new Unsolved mystery series on Netflix. And they are unsolved as the title states, so my usual disclaimer: I do not mean to offend anyone affected by the cases or disrespect anyone. My intent is only to raise awareness and get the cases more out there. Also, this video will combine ASMR and true crime. If you do not like this, please click off now. And the video will contain trigger warning. It contains mentions of violence and murder, and it's a bit graphic, so please do not watch if you will find that upsetting. So without further ado, here is the cases of Gary McCullogh and his stepdaughter Lena Chapin. So this case mostly takes place in Missouri, though they did move around a lot. It's in the area around the Ozark Mountains and various farmhouses. And the case starts around a woman called Sandy, who was Lena's mother. So Sandy was a woman, or is a woman, who has 6 daughters that she has taken care of as they grow up, and they are now all grown up, apart from Lena, who is missing, but she did go missing when she grew up. And she raised them in Missouri. And in this episode, 2 of Sandy's daughters are interviewed. The eldest, who is Brandy, then there's Lena, who has disappeared, who is the second oldest, and then under them is Robin. So Brandy, the oldest, and the third oldest, Robin, are interviewed a lot during this case and provide most of the information. And she also had 3 other daughters who aren't in it, who are called, I think, Rachel, Rosie, and Jeannie, I think, but they're not in it, so they don't really come into the story too much. And Brandy says that Sandy, so they rhyme, sorry, Brandy says that Sandy was a good mother growing up, so there were more hard days than easy ones, she said, but Sandy never smoked or did drugs or drank. And she always ensured there was food on the table, and she'd say something about God bless you every night to them. And as Brandy's saying this, she's actually tears up and says she misses this mother. Like, she had a really good mother growing up. She's just surprised at what she was capable of when she got older. So Sandy was never happy in a relationship for too long. And Brandy says that she liked to use her sex appeal, as she puts it, to attract men, and men were always drawn to her, which is, totally fine, except often these relationships would overlap. So in 1994, Sandy married a good man named Albert McCullogh. You might recognise that last name. And he was stepfather to the 6 girls for 2 years. And they say he was really fun, and he took them to gymnastics and things like that, and he was a really good stepdad and they loved him. But unfortunately, as was Sandy's pattern of behaviour, after 2 years she started to get bored and started cheating on Albert with his brother Gary McCullogh, who I mentioned at the beginning is the missing person. And when Albert found out, him and Gary actually had a fist fight. And when Albert appeared to be winning, Sandy got a large branch and whacked him as hard as she could in the back, knocking the wind out of him. And Albert says it made him realise that, he didn't want to fight for her or about her. And he just said to Gary, you know what, you have her. So Gary and Sandy went off together. In May of 1996, they moved to Arkansas. So they moved to Arkansas, very nearby. So I think, even though it was a different state, it's only slightly over the border, I think. Chris is Sandy's now third husband, because it says that Albert was his second. I imagine the first was the father of the children, though he isn't mentioned. So they live together on this farm, and the girls are all very happy and they like him. Until 1999, when Sandy meets someone significantly younger than her. He's only 22, and I think she's in her mid to late 30s by this point. And his name is Chris Klemp. Chris Klemp. And he is considered to be better looking than Gary, younger, and is from a family that have a lot of money and property. So Sandy moves on to him and starts having an affair in March of 1999. Gary in this time is arrested for passing bad checks, and he works out that it's actually Sandy that's been doing this, and also that she's been cheating on him, and he tells his friends he's going to have to file for a divorce. So his friends are aware that there's something rocky in their relationship. One of his friends who was interviewed says that he's confiding in him. Gary goes to confide in him, saying that, she's threatened me with this shotgun and she pulled the trigger at my stomach, but obviously it's not loaded. I don't load my shotgun, so it was just to scare me, but I want you to hide the gun in case she gets any ideas about killing me. And his friend says, well, actually, there's a shell. I don't know anything about guns, but basically there is a shell in this, and it was a bad shell, so luckily it didn't go off. And the friend gets the pliers out and pulls the shell out, and he says, this is loaded. And that's when he says Gary realised that she had actually meant to kill him, and she had probably put the shell in, and if that shell hadn't been a bad shell, he'd be dead. And that is the last time that friend ever saw Gary alive. So on May 11th, 1999, Gary goes missing. He didn't show up for work, and apparently this is incredibly unlike him, so the police get involved on the 13th of May and go to the house, and as they are there, Sandy pulls up with Lena, her second oldest child, who is 14 at this point, in the car, and is annoyed and says, well, why are you here? And the police say, well, is there anything you need to tell us? And she's, well, yes, actually, I've been meaning to ring you. My husband went off to buy fighting roosters 2 days ago, and he's never returned. So they think that's immediately odd. Why has she not reported it before? And the next week they get a search warrant, and she's really annoyed. Sandy's really not happy about this, but they've got this search warrant, and they say it's incredibly disturbing because it's only been days since Gary went missing, but it appears that Chris Klemp has already moved into the house, and it doesn't appear that Gary's ever lived there. So he has, but it looks like he's never lived there, so they've already got rid of all of his stuff. So that is incredibly suspicious. All of his stuff is gone, and they found out that Chris had moved into the house 2 days after Gary had gone missing. So Lena had told her sisters that if anyone asked them about Gary, they all got interviewed by police, and if anyone asked them just to keep quiet. Their mother had said that if anyone asked you about Gary, just say that your stepdad went to buy fighting roosters and he never came back, and that night you had spaghetti for dinner, and that's all you need to say. And Lena was also saying, make sure you say this, and they do go on to say in it that Lena was very much, even though she was the second oldest child, she was very much the second in command. So it was Sandy, and then Lena was very close to her mother, and she was the second in command, not Brandy, who was the oldest, because Brandy was like a good girl and Lena was more strong, and she was desperate to keep all the sisters together. So the sisters believed that, she actually said to them, look, that if you tell them you're suspicious about Gary, then they're going to take us all away from each other and we'll never see each other again. So she just wanted to keep all her sisters together. And Brandy says she remembers the 11th of May, so the day that Gary went missing, or the very well. So she got home from school, and the mum had come straight to the door and not let them in the house, and said, oh girls, the cat has had kittens in the field, go and look. So all the other girls went off except knows something was wrong, and that's why she remembers it so well. And she looks out of her bedroom window and sees her mother, Sandy, and what appears to be her new partner, Chris Clemp, carrying what she could only describe as like a big thing. Basically, she knew it was Gary and it was covered, but she could see the boots sticking out of the end, and she knew it was Gary and he was wrapped in something. And she was scared, but she never said anything because Lena asked her not to, until years later. So they all moved on with their lives at this point. They had no evidence. Gary's body hadn't been found. They didn't even know technically that he'd been murdered. They just were suspicious. And they moved to St. Louis, got married, and then moved to in 2000, and then moved to Sligo after a year. And as they get older, so Lena was 14 when Gary disappeared, and in the next few years she'd been really good, but she kind of took a dark turn and had two sides to her, where she would do a lot of drugs and drink, and she had only been about 15 and 16 at this point, and her friends and sisters could see something was wrong. And one day she confided in a boyfriend what she had seen. So the boyfriend, I'll get into what she'd seen shortly, but the boyfriend says to her, look, Gary's family, no need to know. His brother was your stepdad who you care about. You've got to tell the police. If Gary's never coming home, they need some closure. So she says, okay, I'm going to tell Albert, my old stepdad, who is Gary's brother, because I trust him and I like him. So she asks if she can go and see Albert, and of course he says yes, and she lets him tape record the conversation. So what she says happened on the night of May 11th is as follows. She was, on the day of May 11th, she had partially seen that Gary had been sat on the couch eating scrambled eggs, and it had somehow infuriated Sandy, and she had walked in and shot him. And the mothers tried to make sure that Lena hadn't seen, but she'd already seen, so she decided to get Lena involved and help cover up. So that's why she asked her to keep the children in their rooms and things like that. And when they were getting rid of the body, they had burned it, and Lena says that she had been with them when they had taken the body to be burned, and they had put the ashes and the remains into buckets, and she was picking up the bucket, the ashes and the remains, and she actually burned the tips of her fingers, and they put them into 3 buckets and just scattered them. And that's why the remains were never found, because they're kind of non-existent, or they're just so scattered it's really unlikely. Also, I don't think anyone knows exactly where, because she's not here to tell us exactly where, so it'd be difficult to find anyway. Plus I forgot to say, this is in 2003, I think, that she's confessing this to Albert, so she's now 17 in 2003. And Albert's really nice about it, and she's like really, she's been really affected by this, and she's realised how wrong it is, which is why she's gone off the rails a bit. And he says, well, let's go to the police. So he takes the recording to the police, but unfortunately Sandy somehow gets involved, and they both lawyer up. So Lena and Sandy then lawyer up, and Lena retracts her statement. I don't know why they still can't use the tape, but apparently they can't, because she says she doesn't want to. And things kind of go quiet again, so they literally know that Sandy's done this, but there's nothing they can do about it. And later that year, Lena gives birth to her son, Coulter, and she changes her life around, and she loves her son so much. He is her entire life, and she really looks after him, and she either goes to work or school, I can't remember which one, but either way she knows she's better in her life. And while she's doing that, her mother Sandy looks after her son, or Sandy's grandson Coulter. She looks after Coulter, and she becomes obsessed with Coulter. She loves Coulter like he's her own son, even though he's a grandson. She's always wanted a boy, but she had 6 now has to come to court and testify about what she had confessed to Albert. They are saying she now has to do this, and Sandy hears about this, and this is in early 2006. And then on the 14th of February 2006, shortly after she is told she has to come to court and testify against her mother, she goes missing. So on the 14th of February, her younger sister Robin turns up at her flat, which she is sharing with her boyfriend Jason, and asks where Lena is. He explains that her mother Sandy has been around and said that Lena has run away to Florida with another man, and Robin immediately knows that her mother is involved in the disappearance because, one, Lena hasn't taken any of her things. All of her clothes are there, and she loved photographs, and she had lots of photographs, and she hadn't taken a single one. And two, she never would have left her infant son, who she loved very much, and she would never have left without saying anything to anyone. So they know basically that their mother is involved, and it's so coincidental in terms of the subpoena being coming out really recently before. So they are incredibly suspicious. And then this is the point in the story where Brandy actually says that Lena had confessed to her around the time she confessed to Albert what her mother had done. And Brandy went to speak to her mother, and she just lost her temper and said, "How could you do this? I can't believe it." And they had a bit of a screaming match. And she threatens to go to the police too. And then Sandy just completely changes and says very seriously, "Get in the truck." So Brandy, her oldest daughter, does what she says, and they drive. And I don't know, I can't remember if Chris was in the car with them, or he was where they'd driven to, but basically Chris is there and he has a gun and he's pointing it to Brandy, and Brandy is frozen with fear, and she's saying, "Please don't let him hurt me, please don't let him hurt me." And she looks Sandy dead in the face, and Sandy just won't even look at her. And the only thing she can think to do is hope to God that the driver's side door is open, so she flings open the driver's side door, and luckily it is, and gets in the front seat with her mother and just clings to her and says, "Please, please don't let him hurt me." And her mother's frozen and just continues to stare ahead, but then eventually she kind of softens and says, "Don't hurt my baby." So, I forgot to say, Brandy had also been saying, "I promise I'll never say anything, please don't let him hurt me." So I think she'd basically scared her into not saying anything ever again. This just shows what she's capable of, and that is really, really sad. So Brandy then admits this on camera, so we know that the mother is capable of doing these really horrible things to her children, and we don't know if she seriously would have gone ahead with letting Chris kill her daughter, if she hadn't promised not to tell anyone ever again. So now Lena's missing and they can't find her anywhere, and Lena is still missing to this day. Her body has never been recovered, and her son Coulter lives with Sandy, which is disturbing because it's most likely that she had something to do with Lena's disappearance, and now her son lives with him. So they think her reasons were twofold. So because obviously she didn't want Lena to testify in court or have a change of heart and really go after her mother, so she killed her. And two, she had always wanted a son, and Coulter was her chance, and she got to keep Coulter, so she ensured that she adopted Coulter when Lena went missing, and that is still the case to this day. So this was in 2006, and he's still her son. He still lives with her, and I think that would probably make him 17. So he's quite a bit older now. And yeah, these sisters say they haven't seen him since he was in the 5th grade, so I don't know how old that would make him. I'm not American, but obviously a lot younger than 17, so they've not seen him in years, because Sandy won't let them. She won't let him have contact with anyone, and she wouldn't even take him to a school for a while because she was scared that people at the school would tell Coulter what she had done to his mother, because everyone knows that she did it. They just don't have proof, and they have promised that when he's old enough, so he won't be 18 yet, that they're going to tell them. But I imagine that he's going to see the show, so I can't imagine what's happened as a result of this and what he thinks. And I guess Sandy is like his mother, so it'll be really hard for him to just, hate her, because he's never known anything else really. He was so young when, he'll be about 15 to 16, won't he? He was so young when she went missing, which is really, really sad. So the girls now have no contact with her, but they 100% stand and say they know that their mother, or their belief is that their mother had something to do with Lena going missing, and she's really good at hiding bodies. They've had lots of properties over the years, and on the show they actually did a ground search of one because they've had permission by the new owners to check, but nothing came of it. But there is another house where there's a well, and there was a well, but there isn't anymore, and they want to check there. But personally, I actually think it's more likely that she just did the same thing again with Gary, and Lena's body could be anywhere. I just find this case so sad because everyone knows, everyone knows that Sandy did it. She definitely did it. She definitely killed Gary. I mean, there's pretty much not proof, but people saw that she did it and have admitted it. And it's most likely that she had something to do with Lena going missing, because Lena wouldn't have left her son, and she probably would have turned up by now or been spotted somewhere, in the last 14 years. And this episode's come out, she would have come back and said, I'm not dead, I'm alive. So it's just really, really sad. And her sisters said they are never going to stop searching for Lena's body and for proof, and they want their mother to serve justice basically for what she's done. So I hope you learned something and enjoyed listening to this case. If you